Guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is a different kind of video. I thought I would just sit down, I've got my blanket, and get a little comfy on the couch with you guys and just tell y'all a little announcement. If you follow me on any of my social medias other than this one, then you will already know that this announcement, but I have not yet talked about it on here. So I thought because I'm a little late to being on here, I might as well use this platform as a deeper dive into it. So the announcement is that Zach and I will be foster parents in just a week or so more. I don't know when this is going up, but from the day that I'm filming this, we're estimating about a week left of our home study process before we are licensed. So that is so exciting. And I thought, I've had so many people in my personal life ask about it, ask questions, and just like not know much about it. And to be honest, we really didn't know much about it either until we got kind of started with it. So I thought I would come on here and we can have a little chat, a little cozy chat, and talk about it. I asked on my Instagram if any of you guys had any questions, and I got a few of those. And then I also just wanted to talk about a few questions that I have been asked a lot and go into that. So that way, if anyone out there wants to know what it's like or anything, I can let you know what the licensing process is like where we are. So let's get into this video. So first, let me get a little comfy. The first thing that I will say is whenever we decided to be foster parents, it was definitely my main decision. I was the one who brought it to my husband and was pushing for it, kind of saying like, hey, I really want to do this, so I think you should get on board, kind of a thing. And at first my husband was like, why? Like, his main question was, why would we do that? And my question was, why would we not do that? So it took a couple of weeks of us just like going back and forth, conversing, me saying my side, him saying his side, for him to finally say, you know what, there's not a big reason why we can't do this. So he was willing to give it a try. Once we got started with the process, I think he really jumped on board after that. Because he was still hesitant when we had our first initial like meetings and stuff, and I think after the training and everything, he was like, no, we can do this. So that is what led to us actually doing it. What did it look like after we both said yes to each other? That looked like us going onto Google and literally looking up how to become a foster parent in Indiana, because that's the state that we live in. We did a little bit of research and found out that you can either go through a private agency or you can go through DCS directly. We did research on both sides. We talked to people on both sides and basically decided that for us, we would rather go through a private agency. We aren't familiar with the system. We aren't familiar with the taxes and the more financial part of it and the document part of it. And a private agency was offering to do all of that for us for free. And so it didn't make sense in our heads to not just go ahead and do that in our area. And we had a lot of good recommendations. There are two main organizations in our area that we had heard good things from both. We decided on one over the other, mainly just because of the location of the office was closer to us, and that's literally it. So once we picked an agency we wanted to go through and fully said yes to each other, it was a matter of going to their website and just submitting a form saying, hey, we're interested. Once we did that, it was probably a couple more days before we got a phone call that was from a licensing agent saying, hey, what is your intention? How can we help you? and we had a conversation with her on the phone and basically got the process started. So that is how you get the process started, at least where we are from. It was probably whenever we had that first phone call, we were told it would take 3 to 6 months from our first interview to get licensed. And the factors that influenced that were how motivated we were, how quickly we were able to get it all done, and how quickly everything was able to come back. So the main thing for us when we went through the process of getting it done quickly was on us. I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but here that was the main factor, was if we were gonna be willing to step it up and do the things that need to be done. I think before I move on, I also think it's important I think a lot of people did ask me, why did I say yes? Why did I bring it to Zach? Why did I bring it up? And I think it's important to note that I have known about foster care and adoption my whole life. My Mimi and Papa on my dad's side fostered so many kids whenever my dad was growing up, and so it was always talked about. So I've just known about it, and it's not an odd thing in our family. I know in a lot of other families who have no idea about it, it's like this like hush hush thing that you just like don't really talk about, and it's not that way in our family. So that's why in the first place I brought it up and knew about it and was excited to do it. Once we had our initial call, it was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after that we had our first initial interview. And it wasn't really an interview, more as it was just her coming over and talking with us about what does this process look like? Are we truly interested in getting it started? What are we interested in? That kind of thing. It was like an hour-long conversation where we just kind of talked through some things. She gave us the initial paperwork, which let me just say the paperwork in general was just in some ways more than I thought it was going to be, but in some ways it was less than I thought it was going to be too. So it wasn't crazy, it was more just like a little bit overwhelming. She gave us the first initial paperwork, and then I want to say it was like a week or two after that we had our first interview. Now, the interview process, the licensing agent we were working with, first of all, was amazing. She made everything feel so chill and nonchalant, and like, I was not like nervous when she came over. I was never like nervous. So I loved that. So whenever she came over for the interview, I was not nervous. The first interview was more questions about our individual relationships with our family respectively, and a little bit more about just us individually. And then that probably took like an hour or an hour and a half of her talking with us, and it was basically just a conversation. Like, it didn't feel like I didn't dress up or anything like a job interview. Like, it was literally a conversation. And then we had that. Then I think maybe before the first interview, actually, we had another meeting between the initial meeting and the interview. There was another meeting there that was training. They will do your training first, or at least where I am from, they will do your training first before your interviews. I completely forgot. The training was pretty easy for us. It was one day, like a couple of hours of straight training, and we were pretty much done. I know a lot of other places, it's like a weekly class that you have to go to for a certain amount of weeks or something like that. One part of ours was online that we did, our CPR training, and our something else training was online. But for the most part, it was like a 2 or 3 hour conversation with her about all things with the system, all things with different individual kids' needs, like a big old training night basically. And then that was done. In one day, we had all of our training done. And so I think that's part of the reason why our process was so sped up, was because of that training process, which I like totally did not expect. I think I'm gonna go and do more training because there's elective training that you can do. And I wanna make sure that I'm like prepared, because I'm sure that that training really prepares us for a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that you just like wouldn't be prepared for off of that. So we did that. Then we did the first interview. Then you have to have at least a week between your first interview and your second interview. So a week later, we were supposed to have our second interview, but it ended up getting pushed back another week after that. So it was 2 weeks later that we had our second interview. And the same day that we had our second interview was the day that we had our home walkthrough. Now, I had read so much on the internet. Like, I thought I knew everything going into this process because I had researched, I had looked things up, I had thought I had figured it out, okay? Literally, almost none of the things that I had researched actually happened. So I caution anyone who's going into this process, every single area, every single county, every single place is so different on their requirements and their processes, that don't be overwhelmed, because I was so overwhelmed reading all the stuff that I was gonna have to do, and it ended up being one of the easiest processes I've ever been through. And yeah, so I just caution against too much online stuff. She came over to our home walkthrough, and I thought it was gonna be super, super, super in-depth. There was definitely some things we had to change before she came over, like locking up our guns and our ammo, and locking up medicines and putting away cleaners and stuff like that. But it really wasn't crazy. I didn't really do a whole lot of like extra stuff, honestly. I was really nervous for that part because of what I'd learned online, but she came over, did the home walkthrough in like 15 minutes, and she was like, everything looks great and we're good to go. And I just was like, breath of relief, because I just was so nervous for that for no reason. Then immediately after that, we headed into the second interview. The second interview was more about Zach and I's relationship to each other, about our marriage and like how our family operates, and if we brought a kid or kids in, how would that affect our schedules? Would we be open to changes? Would we be open to this? Like, it was a lot more that. And mind you, every time that the licensing agent would come over, she would bring a new set of paperwork for us to fill out. And our goal was that by the last time she came over, all of our paperwork would be leaving with her and we would be good to go on paperwork. So when she did our final interview, we sent the rest of our paperwork off with her, and that was the last time we saw her. Now, that was about a week ago. She told us that within 2 weeks that our home study will be done. Now, I thought the home study was just the home walkthrough part. The home study is the entire licensing process, basically. I was confused on that part, but it's the whole process. I don't necessarily know what she does, but she compiles everything from our interviews to our paperwork to everything into one area for the DCS to look at, I guess, and to approve. So we have about another week to wait before we get the home study back to review it, sign it, and then head on into the licensing part. So I don't know much past that, but that's what our process has looked like. Other than having to sign that paperwork, we should have to do no other things, except for just wait for our license to come through. So all in all, it took us less than 3 months. I wanna say from our first interview to the time that we were licensed was almost even less than 2 months. So we were very motivated to get it done, and that pushed us to get it done really, really quickly. And we have, like I said, a great licensing agent who was working with us to get it all done. I think from the first time we sent in a request to when we get licensed, if it stays on schedule, we'll be closer to about 3 months, which is about average in our area. I kind of already touched on this, but there were so many things that I thought would be a big deal that ended up not being a big deal, such as the paperwork. Everyone warned me, it's so much paperwork, it's so much paperwork. In some ways it is so much paperwork. I have never applied to do anything with the government. I have never really had to do anything. The only thing I have that is even comparable to this much paperwork is trying to change my name after I got married. And even there, I'm not even like through all of that. So I have nothing else to compare it to. That is why to me, it was a lot of paperwork. But in the grand scheme of things, it was a lot less paperwork than I thought I would have to fill out. And she really walked us through every single piece of paper. And I wasn't confused about any of it. It wasn't hard. None of it was hard. It was more just compiling things. So that was one thing that I thought was gonna be really hard. That wasn't. The home walkthrough, I had heard from other people that they come in and they look through every single cabinet and every single closet and every single thing that you own. And that's just wasn't the case for us. And she made sure that everything on her checklist was checked off, but other than that, she didn't bother with anything else. And that wasn't as intensive as I thought it was gonna be either. There were some things about our house where I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to change this, this, and this? And those things didn't matter, so I didn't have to stress about them. So now let's move into more of the questions that I get about me personally and about Zach personally, about what are we looking for from this process. Originally, we had said that we would take in children 10 and under. The reason for that being, I'm only 22, about to be 23, and I just don't know if I could do a teenager because I'm so young. I don't know if there would be a level of respect. I think me and a teenager would have so much fun, and I think I would be relatable, but I just don't know if, like, worst comes to worst, if I have to discipline a teenager, I just don't know if I'm gonna get the level of respect that I need. And so that just made me hesitant. So I wanted to get into the process first a little bit before we decide to go any older than 10. I think we'll stick with 8 and under unless they have a sibling who is 9 or 10, then we would accept an older 9 or 10-year-old. Gender doesn't matter to us. Once we get our first placement, that will restrict us a little bit more because we only have 2 bedrooms. So gender will then matter if we take in any more. But we are hoping to get 1 or 2 for the first time. I'm not opposed to a sibling pair. I think 3 would be a lot, but I also don't know if they call me and they're like, we have 3 kiddos, and they show me pictures and like all these things, if I'm gonna be able to be like, no, we can't take 3. So I'm not saying 3 is not a possibility, but 3 would be a lot for me, especially since it is summer and whatever kiddos come into my home are gonna be there all day, every day. And so the goal is 1 or 2. We are much more prepared, I think, for little babies than I thought we would be. So I think ideally we would like a child under 3 and then maybe a child above 3, because that would split them into 2 different rooms. We have a nursery room and we have a little bit older kid room, so that would kind of split it up. But we're on whatever God is sending our way in the moment is what's going to work for us. There is a lot of rules and regulations that we will have to follow with those kiddos. I will still be filming my thoughts on the process, how I'm doing, but I will not be filming those kiddos for just legal reasons. I won't be able to, but also just like their privacy. When I have my own kids, I don't plan on showing them online very much, so I would do that to somebody else's kids. But you'll still be seeing me and my thoughts on the process. I would love to do a video of like what our first week is like once we have our first placement, because I think that would be so interesting. But yeah, that is what I have. The hardest part of the process was staying motivated the entire time, because we wanted to get it done so quickly. I think it was hard. There were some days where we're like, I don't want to go find any more paperwork. I don't want to have to collect anything else. I don't want to have to think about anything else. There was a lot of days like that. So the hardest part was just staying motivated and keeping up with all of the things that we need to be doing. The easiest part was, for me, saying yes in the first place. But I won't say that as my answer. The easiest part of this process has been getting paired up with a really great licensing agent and a great person. She's just a great person in general, and she really helped us with every single thing that we did. So that was the easiest part. I hope that this has been informative. I hope that this gives you hope that you can do it too, because I've had a lot of people say like, I could never do that. It's too intimidating. There's too much. Just a bunch of things. Like I couldn't do that because I'd be too attached. Like I hope that this has helped you see, at least if you're in Indiana, what that process looks like maybe in your area, and gives you hope and reassurance that you can totally do this. So again, we have not had kids in our home yet. We have not experienced that part of it. So I cannot give you any thoughts on that part, but just the licensing part, I feel like a lot of people are so intimidated by. So if that's the part that you're worried about, I hope that this has reassured you in some way. I hope that you all have an amazing week. I can't wait to come back and update you guys on this. Our lives are literally about to change so much in the next couple of weeks. Something that we're excited about, something that we're definitely nervous about. So if you all could send some prayers my way, that would be great. I have really enjoyed having this little couch chat with you guys. I just hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope the Lord is blessing you in so many amazing ways, and I cannot wait to see you guys in my next video. Bye.